Chapter 1. The Savage Encounter. The galaxy was a dangerous place for those who lacked power, and in the far reaches of the Zentarian frontier, that danger manifested as predatory alliances, slavers, and merciless beasts. On the isolated jungle moon of Lindara, 7, survival wasn't just a challenge, it was a daily gamble. Here, civilizations had crumbled long ago, leaving only ruins, feral creatures, and scavengers to fight for dominance. Among these inhabitants was the Lyra, a Veltrictianae feline humanoid species renowned for their grace and beauty but scorned for their perceived weakness. The Lyra had once been a decorated diplomat for her people, a beacon of hope in forging peace between the warring species of her sector. But when the warlords betrayed the Veltrictians and unleashed a bioweapon upon her homeworld, her species was decimated. Now, she was alone, struggling to survive among the hostile remnants of Lindara, 7. She had no allies, no resources, and, worst of all, no food. Days of scavenging had yielded little more than bitter fruits and scraps of nutrient paste left behind by scavengers. The Lyra's once pristine silver fur was now matted with grime, and her emerald eyes had lost their shine. Hunger clawed at her insides, and desperation gnawed at her mind. It was during one of her desperate foraging expeditions near the ruins of an ancient Veltrictian temple that she saw him. The human was unlike any creature she'd ever encountered. Standing tall and broad-shouldered, his figure was imposing, his musculature evident even beneath his rugged armor. His skin was tanned, marked with scars that told of countless battles. He carried a long rifle slung over his shoulder and a survival pack strapped tightly to his back. But it wasn't his weaponry or his physicality that struck the Lyra, it was his aura. To the Lyra, humans were legends. Her people had shared stories of Earthlings-Deathworlders, as they were often called, whose sheer resilience and unpredictability made them one of the galaxy's most dangerous species. Rumors of their extraordinary diets added a sinister edge to these tales. It was said that humans could eat almost anything, from poisonous plants to raw flesh, with little consequence. Veltrictian lore painted them as omnivorous predators, consuming whatever stood in their way. When the human's sharp blue eyes locked onto hers, a primal fear gripped the Lyra. Her instinct screamed to run, but her malnourished body betrayed her. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed against the moss-covered ruins, panting heavily. The human approached slowly, his movements deliberate but not aggressive. His gaze was curious rather than predatory, but the Lyra couldn't shake the image of her fragile body being torn apart by this towering figure. "Stay back," she hissed, baring her sharp teeth in a feeble attempt to appear threatening. To her surprise, the human stopped a few paces away. He crouched low, setting his rifle aside, and raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Easy," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I'm not here to hurt you." The Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Liar. I know what your kind does. You consume everything in your path. What do you want? To fatten me up before you eat me?" The human blinked, clearly taken aback. Then, to her astonishment, he laughed a hearty, genuine laugh that echoed through the jungle. "Eat you?" he repeated, shaking his head. "Lady, I think you've got the wrong idea about humans." The Lyra bristled, her tail flicking nervously. "Then why are you here?" He reached into his survival pack, pulling out a sealed container. Inside was a compressed nutrient bar, which he held out to her. "You look like you could use this." Her stomach growled loudly at the sight of food, but she hesitated. This could be a trick. What if it was poisoned? What if it was some kind of trap? "Why would you give me food?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "What do you want in return?" The human's expression softened. "Because you need it. And because I can't just stand by and watch someone starve." The Lyra stared at him, her instincts warring with her logic. Every fiber of her being told her not to trust him, but the hunger was too much to bear. With a trembling hand, she reached out and took the bar. "Thank you," she said quietly, before tearing into the food with feral desperation. The human watched her with a mixture of pity and fascination. "What's your name?" he asked after a moment. She hesitated, swallowing a mouthful of the nutrient bar. The Lyra. "I'm Marcus," he said, offering her a small smile. "It's nice to meet you." As night fell over Lindara, 7, Marcus set up a small camp near the ruins. Despite her initial mistrust, Delira stayed close, drawn by the warmth of his fire and the lingering scent of food. She watched him warily as he cooked a meal over the flames, her sharp ears picking up the sizzle of synthetic protein. "Why are you here, Marcus?" she asked finally, breaking the silence. "This moon is a graveyard. There's nothing here for you." "I could ask you the same thing," he replied, not looking up from his cooking. "But if you must know, I'm here for salvage. A lot of Veltriction tech got left behind when they were attacked. I'm trying to recover what I can before the scavengers strip it all bare." Thalira's ears flattened, and her claws dug into the ground. The mention of her people's downfall was like a dagger to her heart. "So you're just another scavenger," she said bitterly. Marcus looked up then, his expression serious. "No, I'm not here to profit off your people's suffering. I'm trying to preserve what's left of their legacy." Her gaze softened, but she still didn't fully trust him. "And you expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything," he said simply, "but actions speak louder than words. Stick around, and you'll see for yourself." As the night deepened, Delira found herself drifting closer to the fire. The warmth was intoxicating, and despite her fear, Marcus's presence was oddly comforting. She had spent so long running, hiding, and starving that she had forgotten what it felt like to sit in relative safety. Marcus, for his part, didn't push her. He simply shared his food and offered her a spare blanket, treating her as an equal rather than a curiosity or a threat. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked as she curled up by the fire, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her, his blue eyes reflecting the flames. "Because everyone deserves a second chance." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Delira allowed herself to hope. Chapter 2. The Journey Together. The fire crackled softly, its warmth a rare comfort in the cold jungle night of Lindara, 7. Delira remained curled near its edge, her eyes half closed but her mind restless. Trusting Marcus was a gamble she wasn't sure she could afford to lose. Yet the human, with his easy manner and strange kindness, had done nothing but extend help when she needed it most. Marcus leaned back against a nearby tree, cleaning his weapon with practiced precision. He hadn't said much since offering her food, giving her the space she needed to adjust to his presence. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was patient, like the pause before the dawn. Eventually, Delira broke it. "You said you're here to salvage," she began, her voice tentative. "But why Lindara, 7? There's nothing left of my people here. Just ruins and death." Marcus glanced up from his weapon, his gaze thoughtful. "Ruins aren't just dead stones, Delira. They tell stories. Your people left behind artifacts, technology, history, things worth preserving before scavengers strip them bare and sell them to the highest bidder." Delira scoffed. "You sound like a historian." He smirked. "Not quite. Let's just say I have a personal interest in keeping history alive." Her ears flicked forward, curiosity momentarily overcoming her caution. "A personal interest? What kind of human takes an interest in Veltriction ruins?" Marcus hesitated, his expression growing distant. "Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything." Delira fell silent, recognizing the weight in his words. She understood that pain all too well. The next morning, Marcus offered Delira a simple proposition. Work together. He needed someone who knew the terrain and could help him navigate the ruins, and she needed food, shelter, and protection. It was an uneasy alliance, born of necessity rather than trust, but both agreed to it. Their first destination was an ancient Veltriction temple deep in the jungle, a place Marcus believed might hold valuable relics. Delira had avoided the temple in her earlier foraging. Legends warned that it was cursed, and even now, she hesitated to go near it. As they trekked through the dense underbrush, Marcus noticed her unease. "You're quiet," he said, brushing aside a low-hanging branch. "Something bothering you?" Thalira's tail swished nervously. "The temple is dangerous. My people believed it was cursed. Anyone who entered never returned." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And you believe that?" Her gaze sharpened. Do you believe every predator in this jungle is just a myth? Sometimes stories exist for a reason. He nodded, conceding the point. Fair enough. But if there's danger, we'll face it together. His confidence was baffling to her. You humans are insane, she muttered, but there was a hint of admiration in her tone. The temple loomed ahead, its massive stone facade covered in vines and moss. Ancient carvings adorned its walls, depicting scenes of Veltrixian warriors, priests, and what the Lyra could only describe as monstrous, otherworldly beings. Charming place, Marcus said dryly, his rifle at the ready. Any idea what we might find inside? Death, the Lyra replied bluntly. Or worse. Undeterred, Marcus led the way, his boots crunching over the cracked stone steps. The Lyra followed reluctantly, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow for movement. The air inside the temple was heavy, the faint hum of ancient energy resonating through the halls. As they ventured deeper, they found evidence of previous visitors. Broken tools, discarded supplies, and claw marks gouged into the walls. The Lyra's unease grew with each step. Something's not right, she whispered. We should leave. Marcus paused, glancing over his shoulder. Not yet. Look. Ahead, a faint glow illuminated a large chamber. In its center stood an elaborate pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline artifact pulsing with light. Veltrixian glyphs covered the pedestal, their meanings long forgotten. Marcus approached cautiously, his every movement deliberate. The Lyra hung back, her instincts screaming at her to run. This isn't a relic, she hissed. It's a trap? He nodded. Probably. But it's also important. Let me dash. Before he could finish, a low growl echoed through the chamber. The Lyra's fur bristled as a massive creature emerged from the shadows, a hulking, quadrupedal beast with glowing eyes and jagged fangs. Its hide shimmered with an almost metallic sheen, and its claws sparked as they scraped against the stone floor. Get behind me, Marcus barked, raising his rifle. The Lyra didn't need to be told twice. She darted to the side, her claws digging into the stone as she scrambled for cover. The beast lunged, its roar deafening, and Marcus opened fire. Plasma bolts slammed into the creature's hide, but the impacts barely slowed it down. It's armored, the Lyra shouted, peering out from behind a broken column. Aim for the joints. Marcus adjusted his aim, firing at the creature's legs. The plasma bolts struck true, and the beast stumbled, roaring in frustration. But it wasn't finished. With terrifying speed, it whipped around and charged. Move, Marcus yelled, diving to the side just as the creature barreled past. Its massive claws shattered the pedestal, sending shards of crystal flying. The creature snarled, its glowing eyes locking onto Marcus. It lunged again, but this time, the Lyra sprang into action. With a burst of agility, she leapt onto the beast's back, her claws slashing at its vulnerable neck. The creature thrashed, trying to shake her off, but she held on with grim determination. Now, she shouted. Hit it while it's distracted. Marcus didn't hesitate. He fired a concentrated burst at the exposed joint where the creature's front leg met its body. The plasma bolts tore through flesh and metal, and the beast let out a final, ear-splitting roar before collapsing in a heap. The chamber fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of Marcus and the Lyra. She slid off the beast's back, her silver fur matted with its strange, viscous blood. Well, Marcus said, lowering his rifle, that was fun. The Lyra glared at him. You humans have a twisted sense of fun. He chuckled, offering her a hand. You're pretty good in a fight. She hesitated, then took his hand, allowing him to pull her to her feet. Don't get used to it, she muttered, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. Together, they turned to the ruined pedestal. Among the debris, the crystal artifact still pulsed faintly, its light dim but steady. Was it worth it? The Lyra asked, eyeing the artifact warily. Marcus picked it up, studying it carefully. If this holds the key to stopping whatever destroyed your people, then yes, it's worth it. Her gaze softened. Maybe you're not as insane as I thought. High praise, he said with a grin. Let's get out of here before something else decides we look tasty. As they made their way back through the jungle, Delira couldn't help but feel a spark of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Chapter 3. Unlikely Allies. The jungle around them stirred with the sounds of distant predators. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle a potential threat. Delira kept her sharp eyes on their surroundings, her ears twitching at the faintest noise, while Marcus carried the crystal artifact securely in his pack. They moved quickly but cautiously, retracing their steps toward the small clearing where Marcus had set up camp. The encounter with the beast in the temple weighed heavily on Delira. It wasn't just the danger, it was the implications. That creature wasn't natural. Its metallic sheen, its enhanced strength, these were hallmarks of bioengineering. The Veltricians had dabbled in such technologies before their fall, but the temple wasn't a lab. Someone or something had turned it into a trap. "You've been quiet," Marcus said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "Thinking about that thing back there?" She nodded, her tail flicking nervously. It wasn't just a guardian. It was designed to kill intruders. Whoever set that trap knew what they were doing. Marcus adjusted his rifle strap, his expression thoughtful. "You think it was set recently?" "Has to be. My people left Lindara 7 decades ago. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't there when we abandoned the temple." Marcus frowned. "Then someone else is hunting for the same tech we are." Delira stopped abruptly, her claws digging into the mossy ground. "Not we, Marcus. You. I don't care about relics or artifacts. All I want is to survive." Marcus turned to face her, his expression softening. "And I want the same thing for you and your people's legacy. Whatever's happening here, it's bigger than both of us. We can't just walk away." She narrowed her eyes, her mistrust flaring again. "Why do you care so much? You don't even know me." He hesitated, then sighed. "Because I've seen what happens when history is erased. My own people almost destroyed themselves once. If someone hadn't fought to preserve what mattered, we wouldn't have made it out alive." Delira studied him for a moment, her instincts warring with her logic. Finally, she relented. "Fine, but don't expect me to play the hero." Marcus grinned. "Noted." By the time they reached the camp, night had fallen. The stars above were unusually bright, their light cutting through the jungle canopy. Marcus quickly rekindled the fire while Delira scanned the perimeter, her sharp senses on high alert. As they ate a simple meal of nutrient rations and filtered water, Marcus retrieved the crystal artifact from his pack. Its faint glow cast eerie shadows across his face as he turned it over in his hands. "What is that thing, anyway?" Delira asked, leaning closer. "Not sure yet," Marcus admitted. "But these glyphs." He traced the intricate carvings on the artifact's surface. "They look like Veltrician runes. Maybe some kind of data storage?" Delira's ears perked up. "If it's a data core, we need a console to access it. There might still be functional tech in the ruins." Marcus nodded. "First light, we'll head back. But we'll need to be careful. Whoever set that trap might still be around." They didn't have to wait until morning to find out. Delira awoke to the sound of low, guttural voices echoing through the jungle. She sprang to her feet, her claws unsheathing instinctively. Marcus was already awake, his rifle in hand, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Scavengers," he whispered, nodding toward the faint glow of lights in the distance. "Looks like they're heading for the temple." Delira's fur bristled. "They're after the artifact." Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. "Then we'd better stop them." They tracked the scavengers through the dense jungle, careful to stay downwind and out of sight. The group was small, 6 heavily armed figures clad in mismatched armor. Their leader, a towering reptilian creature with cybernetic implants, barked orders in a language Delira didn't recognize. "Mercenaries," Marcus muttered. "Probably hired by whoever's behind the traps." Delira's emerald eyes narrowed. "We can't take them all on." "Not head-on," Marcus agreed. He pointed to the uneven terrain ahead. "But we can set up an ambush. If we take out their leader, the rest might scatter." Delira hesitated. "I'm not a soldier." "No," Marcus said, meeting her gaze. "But you're smart. You know this jungle better than they do. We've got the advantage." The ambush was swift and brutal. Using the jungle to their advantage, Marcus and the Lyra picked off the mercenaries one by one. Marcus's precise shots disabled their weapons, while Thalira's agility allowed her to flank and disarm their remaining fighters. By the time the dust settled, only the leader remained. Pinned beneath Marcus's rifle, the reptilian mercenary sneered up at him. "You don't know what you're meddling with, human." "Enlighten me," Marcus said, his voice cold. The mercenary chuckled darkly. The Veltrixians weren't the only ones who left their mark on this moon. The Nexari Syndicate owns this world now, and they won't let you steal their prize. Thalira's breath hitched at the name. The Nexari? They're the ones who destroyed my people. The mercenary smirked. "And they'll finish what they started if you don't run." Marcus's expression hardened. "We're not running." With a single motion, he knocked the mercenary unconscious. Turning to the Lyra, he said, "We need to move. If the Nexari are involved, this is bigger than I thought." The Lyra nodded, her fear giving way to determination. "Then let's make sure they don't get what they're after." As dawn broke over the jungle, Marcus and the Lyra prepared for the final leg of their journey. Armed with the crystal artifact and a newfound sense of purpose, they headed deeper into the ruins, ready to face whatever the Nexari Syndicate had in store. Chapter 4. The Predator Becomes the Protector. The jungle of Lindara. 7 glowed faintly in the pale light of dawn, its bioluminescent flora dimming as the planet's star began its slow rise. Marcus and the Lyra pressed forward toward the heart of the Veltrixian ruins. Each step brought them closer to danger, but retreat wasn't an option. The Nexari Syndicate, a shadowy organization known for its ruthless pursuit of power, had claimed this moon, and now they were after the same artifact Marcus carried in his pack. Thalira's sharp eyes darted around the dense foliage as she whispered, "This Nexari Syndicate, they destroyed my home. My people never stood a chance against them. If they're here, it's not just about relics. They want something much bigger." Marcus nodded grimly. "The artifact, whatever data or technology it holds, is important enough to kill for. We can't let it fall into their hands." The Lyra paused, her tail flicking nervously. "Why do you care so much, Marcus? You don't even know me or my people." He turned to her, his expression resolute. "Because someone has to care. The galaxy's full of people like the Nexari, those who destroy without thinking of the consequences. If no one fights back, they'll keep winning." Thalira's gaze softened, but she quickly masked her emotions. "Then let's make sure they lose this time." The final ruins. The Veltrixian temple ruins loomed ahead, their intricate carvings now barely visible beneath decades of vines and erosion. But this wasn't the same temple as before. This one was larger, its towering spires piercing the jungle canopy. The air hummed faintly with energy, and the ruins seemed alive with an unnatural light. Marcus crouched near a broken column, scanning the area with his binoculars. "There," he said, pointing. "Nexari operatives. 2 squads, heavily armed. Looks like they've set up a base." The Lyra followed his gaze, her sharp eyes picking out the mercenaries patrolling the perimeter. "They're already inside," she said. "If they access the temple's core before us." Marcus adjusted his rifle. "They won't. We'll split up. You take the high ground and create a distraction. I'll infiltrate the temple and secure the artifact." Thalira's ears flattened. "You're asking me to go head-to-head with Nexari mercenaries while you run off to play hero?" Marcus smirked. "I'm not asking. I'm trusting you." For a moment, the Lyra glared at him, but then she sighed and nodded. "Fine, but if you die in there, I'm not dragging your corpse back." "Deal," Marcus said with a grin. "Stay safe." "You too," she muttered, her voice soft. The core of the temple. As the Lyra darted into the trees, Marcus slipped through the Nexari patrols, using the shadows of the ruins for cover. Inside the temple, the energy in the air was stronger, almost tangible. The walls were lined with glowing glyphs, and faint whispers seemed to emanate from the very stone. At the center of the chamber stood a massive console, its surface covered in Veltrixian runes. The artifact Marcus carried began to glow faintly, resonating with the console's energy. "This is it," he murmured, placing the artifact into the console's central slot. The runes lit up, and the temple seemed to awaken. A holographic projection flickered to life above the console, displaying schematics of a massive structure in ancient Veltrixian starship, buried deep beneath the ruins. The ship's design was unlike anything Marcus had seen before, its sleek curves and intricate patterns hinting at technology far beyond the galaxy's current understanding. "By the stars," Marcus whispered. "This isn't just a relic. It's a weapon." Before he could process the implications, a cold voice echoed through the chamber. "And now, it belongs to us." Marcus spun around, his rifle raised. A Nexari commander stepped out of the shadows, flanked by heavily armed mercenaries. The commander, a tall humanoid with cybernetic enhancements, smirked as he gestured to the artifact. "Hand it over, human," the commander said. "You've done the hard part for us. Now step aside." Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. "Not a chance." The commander sighed, his smirk fading. "You humans always make things difficult. Kill him." Thalira's intervention. Outside, the Lyra watched the chaos unfold. The distraction she had created had drawn most of the Nexari forces away from the temple, but the sounds of gunfire from within told her Marcus was in trouble. Her claws dug into the bark of a tree as she debated her next move. "Damn it, Marcus," she muttered. "Why do you always have to be so stubborn?" With a burst of speed, she leapt down from her perch and sprinted toward the temple, her movements a blur of silver fur and sharp claws. The remaining Nexari operatives barely had time to react before she was upon them, her agility and ferocity cutting through their ranks. By the time she reached the central chamber, the Nexari commander was standing over a wounded Marcus, the artifact in his grasp. "You should have stayed in the jungle," the commander sneered. "Now, you'll die here." The Lyra let out a feral growl, launching herself at the commander. Her claws raked across his armor, forcing him to drop the artifact. He stumbled back, his cybernetic enhancements sparking as he struggled to recover. "Not today," she hissed, standing protectively over Marcus. The awakening. The artifact, now glowing brightly, pulsed with energy as it reconnected with the console. The temple shook violently, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. The holographic projection above the console shifted, now displaying a countdown. "What did you do?" the Nexari commander shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Marcus, clutching his side where a plasma bolt had grazed him, managed a weak smile. Activated the failsafe. The ground beneath them trembled as massive doors began to open, revealing a hidden hangar. Within, the Veltrixian starship lay dormant, its sleek surface glinting in the faint light of the ruins. The ship's engines roared to life, and the glyphs on its hull glowed with the same energy as the artifact. "That ship was never meant for you," the Lyra said, her voice steady as she glared at the commander. "It was meant to protect my people." The commander snarled, his cybernetic arm whirring as he raised a weapon. "You think you've won?" The Nexari always dash. Before he could finish, the ship's automated defenses activated. A beam of energy shot from its hull, incinerating the commander and his remaining forces in an instant. The Queen of the Skies. As the temple collapsed around them, Marcus and the Lyra scrambled aboard the starship. The interior was pristine, its controls lighting up as the Lyra placed her hand on a glowing console. The ship seemed to recognize her, responding to her touch with a melodic hum. "It's bonded to you," Marcus said, his voice filled with awe. "Your people built it for someone like you." The Lyra looked around, her expression a mix of wonder and sorrow. "It's all that's left of them. But maybe it's enough." The ship rose into the sky, its engines cutting through the jungle canopy as it carried them away from the ruins. Below, Lindara, 7 faded into the distance, the Nexari Syndicate's forces utterly destroyed. As they soared through the stars, Marcus turned to the Lyra, a faint smile on his lips. "You saved me back there. Guess that makes us even." She smirked, her tail flicking playfully. "Don't get used to it, human." But as she gazed out at the stars, the weight of her people's legacy settled on her shoulders. With Marcus by her side, she vowed to use the ship not for war, but for hope to rebuild what had been lost and ensure the Nexari could never harm anyone again.